Hey guys, so in the last video we talked about CSS selectors, and in this video we're moving on to discussing three main CSS topics, and those will be backgrounds, we'll also be looking at borders, then we'll be looking at margins, and by the end of this video you should be able to use backgrounds in your code, add borders to some of your tags, and also work with margins. Also, don't forget we are currently working with CSS, that is the cascading style sheet. So this is what we are currently working on. So most of what we'll be doing will be in CSS. So what I'll do is open a separate window here, create a new style.css. Now you can call your CSS file any name, but this is just it's not even a standard, just sort of like a convention, because over time you might have different style sheet for different parts of your page, for different parts of your code, and you don't want to have one name for everything, so you can be able to differentiate which one is which. So that being said, so let's start with borders here. So I'll remove all of this. Remember, your HTML file has to come with its own standard heading and border and everything. So at the same time, we want to relative link our style.css, well, style sheet and the metas and all of that. Also want to add title talking about backgrounds, talking about borders, and then we're talking about margins. So let's not forget that as well. Then currently the body tag contains MC contents, and let's open the file here. Let's see if I can figure out where it is. I know, never mind, I'll need to open it actually. I should be under, let me see, let me try and get it out. Okay, just a minute. Okay, there we go. So it will be under home. I will explain to you why I'm doing this in a minute. Okay, there we go. So you can see our title has changed to backgrounds, border and margin, so it means we are in the right file. To confirm that, let's do a typical h1 here, hello world, save this and reload and see. Okay, good. So we are here. Let me just increase this to 100. Yeah, so this will be your typical size. Okay, so let's talk about margins. Let's talk about backgrounds rather. Now, what are backgrounds? Now, CSS backgrounds in CSS are used to add background effects for elements. For example, this whole page, you can add a background effect for it. Sometimes you see pages with pictures in their backgrounds and with text in front. Those are examples of backgrounds. Now currently there are 4 ways actually that you can add backgrounds to your code. First is using colors, second is using image, then third is using attachments, and the last one is just like a shorthand of it. Now there's one more, which is background repeat. but background repeat only works when you have an image in your background. I will show you that in a minute. So let's start with the first one. Let's start with background colors, right? Now background color does exactly what it means. It adds colors to your background, right? That's sort of like a color to the background of your page. Right now our CSS file is open here and we've imported it. Right now we don't have anything open here. What we want to do is apply a color to our whole page, and to do that we don't need to add any tag. We just style the whole body tag. That's by doing body, right? Then we do background color. So let's style it to something like yeah, let's say something like light yellow, right? From I get that, so when we reload it should change. There we have it. You notice now that the whole background has changed. That's because we start the body tag, and the body tag is essentially the tag responsible for anything that's going to show on your page, right? We don't need to start the head tag or anything like that because, well, it's not being rendered. This is the only thing being rendered inside the body tag, so that's why we are styling it. Now there are numerous ways you can add a background color. You can either use color code like this, or you can use a like text light yellow. Let's see if we actually have light yellow. Oh yeah, so this is a bit of light yellow then. So using text you can also add colors. To make it all the more obvious, let me use light blue. Now that being said, there are a finite number of text colors in CSS, and the more you work with it, the more you see examples of it, which is why most developers prefer using color codes, because this way it sort of gives them a ground to play with, right? So you can do something like this. Let's do FDA. I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah, this does looks a bit lighter. Just a bit lighter. Okay, yeah, this looks a bit okay. Now another way you can add background color is by using by adding opacity to as part of the background color. For that, let's make another example. I should be able to make this work. Let's add a class, right, of main, right? And this main is going to have a background color of purple, and then it's going to have an opacity of 40%. Now what opacity means is it determines how transparent the code is, how transparent the old tag would be. Let me add something here. Let's add a p tag and 11 paragraph. Okay, we have this. So let's reload this and see. There we go. Now you notice something, we can barely see the text. That's because the opacity has been toned down to about 40%, so it's very light. If I should remove the opacity there by putting it at default of 1, and I reload, see, it's more obvious now. We can see it very well. But if we write it back, meaning we are saying, okay, you know what, give me 40% of opacity, give me 40% of 1. Yeah, we have this light, like it's so not that obvious, we can't really see it. And so that's what opacity does, right? So So that's actually that about adding opacity to your background color. Later I'll show you how you can just do this in one line, but for now it's really imperative that we do it step by step. Like I already said before, don't worry too much about how nice it will look against each other. That is actually a design decision. What we are trying to learn here is just how they work. Okay, now that we've gotten past that, let's look at the next one, which is adding background image. Now, adding background image is exactly what it says, background image. Let me quickly get an image. So I'll be using Pexels. They actually offer free images that you can use, free stock photos that you can use. I actually have nice ones. No, let's try going for something. Let's go for something more my screen size, 1920 by 1080. Let's see if we can see something like that. Oh, okay, that did not work. Yeah, my 1080 desktop wallpaper. Let's see. Okay, so that is loading something. Yeah, this looks okay. Let's just pick this. Okay, so let's download that. We have that set there, so that's gonna take time to load. So you notice something about this image that I'm currently downloading. The size is quite large, 2.4 megabytes. You want to avoid large file sizes in your code. I'll show you that later on how you can actually go about avoiding having too much large sizes in your code by optimizing images and all of that. But for now, let's just worry about adding this into our code. So I have moved it there. Sorry, I don't have my file manager set up yet. I'll set it up later. So the file is currently here. Let me rename it to just bg, so it can be easier to quickly type bg.jpg. Okay, so that is done. Okay, so where do we apply this background image? Let's just apply it on the whole page and see how it looks. Yeah, applying it on the whole page means we'll come back to body here. Right now you can have background color and have background image at the same time, but let's move background image for now. Makes it easier on us. And let's add the background image. Now, do you add background images to CSS? It's unlike the way you add files to HTML. You actually have to specify a URL to that file. Now, specifying the URL does not necessarily mean you have to go get a URL like a view URL somewhere. No, you don't have to go through all that stress. URL can be an image in your code base, can also be an image from another website that you just want to reference here, but you have to add a URL to it. And that URL is also like a function, right? Remember when we were talking about functions in RGBA, right? And that URL, the params for it will be the name of the image. You can of course use relative links. Then there it is. Now when we save this and reload, okay, it's gone, and we should get our background image. Notice that the image took a bit longer to show up. That's because it's quite large. Like I said before, even I'm running it locally and it's this large, so we'll work on image optimization later. But you notice something about our opacity here. The image is kind of showing through, like you see here. So those are the examples of opacity, and now the image has kind of covered everything. But remember when we wanted to download the image, it wasn't this. This is not the only thing that we saw. We saw backgrounds and all of that, right? that's where making the image look a bit okay comes in, which we will get into in just a minute. Now let me add it and show you. That will be the background. Okay, it's actually not background. Trying to get it out. Okay, I think it's background position. Yeah. Okay, background size. Yeah. So now background size, what background size will do is it will kind of give you either you can either specify a certain size that you want the image to have. Like, okay, background size uses positions, right, where you put in the x and the y, the x and the y actually values, where you tell, okay, I want to like use an image of this size. Now when we start doing more of image imports, you see what I mean. But for now, we just put the text that follows CSS, and that is contain. Now what contain will do is it will make this whole image be contained in this single page. Right now this image is kind of giving us a large size, but contain kind of like shrink the image down. Right, so now we have that small image everywhere, but now it has given us an issue. It's kind of repeated everywhere, which brings us to our next background type that we'll talk about right now, and that is background repeat. Now what background repeat does exactly what it says it to do. It repeats a background that you've imported across any of the x or y axis. Now say for example you just want to repeat it across the x axis, we would actually add background repeat, then we add repeat x. Now what repeat x will do is just repeat it across x. You know that it has cleared the rest. That's because it only repeated it across one. If you told it to repeat across y, to repeat it across y, then now repeat each across x. Let me show you that too. If we change this to y and say, okay, no, just repeat it only y, to do exactly that, repeat y all on one side, right? But now we don't want it to repeat, we want it to no repeat, we want it to not repeat. So that's what no repeat does. Do not repeat this background. What you do, see, it has put it up here. That's because when we try to contain it, the image size became too small for it to actually undo. Which brings us to our next one, which is cover. Now what cover will do is it will try to stretch the whole image to cover the whole page. Can you see? So now we are not only like seeing a scaled version of the image itself has covered the whole page, and now we are looking at it the way we downloaded it earlier. So that is what background image does. If you don't understand this, you can take it back a bit and watch it in repeat, and if you have any other questions, just definitely let me know. So that's actually that about adding background image to your code. Now do you have another one called background attachment? Now the funny thing about background attachment works best when you have an image that is kind of scaled down. Let's see an example of that. Let's add the background attachment to the code. Now there are two ways you can actually work with background attachment. It defines the behavior of whatever image you add. You can decide if you want the image to be scrollable or not, right? By default it is fixed, right? But if you put scroll and you put no repeat, then you say, okay, no, this background size I don't want to just cover, I want it to belong to one side of the page, right? So then let's put left bottom. Now what left bottom will do is to put the image on the left down part of our page. So let's reload that and see. Then the image will be scrollable if the content you put is actually like more than the whole page. Right now the content we have here is not more than the whole page, so it's not scrollable no matter how much you try to scroll it. So that's what background attachment does. That's why sometimes there are some pages that you load, they'll be fixed on at the back and you can scroll through and the images will not change, but some they'll follow your text as you are scrolling it. So let me move that, and there we have it back. Okay, so we're good. So that's actually that about background attachments. Now remember we said before that writing so much code is not actually like a very nice idea. Yeah, that's why the good folks at CSS are giving us a much better way of adding background to our page, and that's by using the shorthand method. Now I think we've used the shorthand method a bit when we were talking about margins before in our earlier class, but I'll show you that right now. Now we have these three here, but we don't want to write them in repeat like this. That's taking 3 lines of code. We just want 1 line, no stress. To do that, we just add background. That's what we need to do. Then we'll now start specifying what we want. Now the syntax for your background, for background shorthand, okay, that's not it. For background shorthand is this. When you say background shorthand, you have to follow this format. The background color, then the background, if this is a background image, followed by background repeat, followed by the background attachments if it's available. Then we have the last one, we have the background position, which also doubles as the size as needed, right? And that is how we're going to write it, but we don't have to use everything. CSS will automatically know if we are using a color or not, and right now we are not using a color, so we really specify background image followed by no repeats, then no attachments. Let's follow it by the position cover. So we remove the background, all of this. So this should load the same image and not change anything. Okay, there we go. Did not load it, so must have done something wrong. Let's try that again. Okay, let's add customary color, URL, no repeater. Okay, let's try that again. That being said, everything should load as required. Let's, of course, I'm doing something wrong, which I am getting the error here, invalid property value. Okay, so let me remove this and see what's going on. There we go. Okay, so using the shorthand, as we've just seen now, has its shortcomings, right? You can only add all of these. You can't add you can't use the size, you can't use background, you can only use background position. So let's just add the background size. I'll put cover here. That should solve the issue we have currently. There we go. So using the background shorthand as a shortcomings, personally I would just advise you use it for only colors and not necessarily images. because then you won't be able to make use of most of it, right? So that's that about background. Of course, we have other ones. We have the background clip, we have the background origin. You can check this out on your own. These ones that we're working with right now are just to make sure we have a grasp understanding of how the concept works.